When I heard this story about a man who got his head cut off, I felt devastated, and it's truly disgusting. But I'm going to read it to you guys in case you haven't heard in the news. U.S. journalist James Foley beheaded by Islamic State militants in Iraq. The United States stood firm Wednesday in its fight with Islamic State militants who beheaded a U.S. journalist in Iraq, pledging to continue attacking the group, and despite its threat to kill another American hostage, the U.S. military continued its air strikes against the group as President Barack Obama denounced the group as a cancer threatening the entire region. "We will be vigilant and we will be relentless," Obama said, calling for a global response to the group that now controls territory in both Iraq and Syria. Obama condemned the group's execution of journalist James Foley, whose death he said had left the nation heartbroken, in forceful remarks. Obama accused the Islamic State of torturing, raping, and murdering thousands of people in cowardly acts of violence. ISIL speaks for no religion, Obama said, using an alternative name for the Islamic State. Their victims are overwhelmingly Muslim, and no faith teaches people to massacre innocents. Just God would stand for what they did yesterday, and what they do every single day. Obama's remarks affirmed that the U.S. would not change its military posture in Iraq in response to Foley's killing. Since the video was released Tuesday, the U.S. military has pressed ahead by conducting nearly a dozen airstrikes on Islamic State targets in Iraq. The president said he told Foley's family in a phone call Wednesday that the United States joins them in honoring all that Foley did, praising the journalist for his work, telling the story of the crisis in Syria, where Foley was captured in 2012. Jim Foley's life stands in stark contrast to his killings. Obama said he spoke from Martha's Vineyard in Massachusetts, where the president is on vacation. Foley, 40, from Rochester, New Hampshire, went missing in northern Syria in November 2012, while freelancing for agents France Press and the Boston-based media company Global Post. The car he was riding in was stopped by 4 militants in a contested battle zone that both Sunni rebel fighters and government forces were trying to control. He had not been heard from since. The beheading marks the first time the Islamic State has killed an American citizen since the Syrian conflict broke out in March 2011. Up in the stakes in an increasingly chaotic and multi-layered war, the killing is unlikely to complicate U.S. involvement in Iraq and the Obama administration's efforts to contain the group as it expands in both Iraq and Syria. The group is the heir apparent of the militancy known as al-Qaeda in Iraq, which beheaded many of its victims, including American businessman Nicholas Berg in 2004. The video released on websites Tuesday appears to show the increasing sophistications of the Islamic State group's media unit and begins with scenes of Obama explaining his decision to order airstrikes. It then cuts to Foley kneeling in the desert next to a black-clad militant with a knife to his throat. After the captive speaks, the militant is shown apparently beginning to cut his neck. The video fades to black before the beheading is completed. The next shot shows the captive living dead. The video appears to have been shot in an arid area. There's no vegetation to be seen, and the horizon is in the distance where the sand meets the gray-blue sky. At the end of the video, a militant shows a second man who is identified as another American journalist, Stephen Sotloff. Owen warns that he would be the next captive killed. Sotloff was kidnapped near the Syrian-Turkish border in August 2013. He had freelanced for Time, the National Interest and Media Line. Several senior U.S. officials with direct knowledge of the situation said the Islamic State very recently threatened to kill Foley to avenge the crushing airstrikes over the past 2 weeks against militants. advancing on Mount Sinjar, the Mosul Dam, and the Kurdish capital of Erbil. Both areas are in northern Iraq, which has become a key front of the Islamic State as its fighters travel to and from Syria. Since August 8th, the U.S. military has struck at least 70 Islamic State targets, including security checkpoints, vehicles, and weapons caches. It's not clear how many militants have been killed in the strikes, although it's likely that some more. The Islamic State militant group is so ruthless in its attacks against all people they consider heretics or infidels that it has been disowned by Al-Qaeda's leaders in seeking to impose its harsh interpretation of Islamic law in the land and is trying to control the extremists have slain soldiers and civilians alike in horrifying ways, including mounting the decapitated heads of some victims on spikes. This is the last paragraph. The New York-based Committee to Protect Journalists estimated Tuesday that about 20 journalists are missing in Syria and has not released their nationalities. In its annual report in November, the committee concluded that the missing journalists were either being held and threatened with death by extremists or taken captive by gangs seeking ransom. The group's report described the widespread seizures of the journalists as unprecedented and largely unreported by news organizations, with hopes that keeping the kidnappings out of public view may be help in the captives' release. This is just a disaster. Having your life taken by a man who cuts your head off for some stupid reason is just terrible. 2 people died, head cut off. It was hard for me to read, but I wanted to tell you guys. It's just sad, you know? Getting your head off caught for nothing. Thanks, guys. Bye.